the hearing will commence. There'll be a few formalities to do with that, but once we get onto the hearing proper, we will start with a report on the application from the licensing officer. We will then there may be some questions for the licensing officer if anybody needs any clarification on the report. After that point, the applicant will be asked to present his case to the subcommittee. Again, once that is concluded, there will be an opportunity for questions to be asked. And once everyone has had questions and the chair is satisfied we can proceed, those persons that have made written representations and have requested to make oral representations to the subcommittee may then put their submissions. And again, there may be questions for clarification following those. There may be a summing up from the licensing officer if there's anything that the licensing officer wishes to clarify. And finally, the applicant will be able to summarise the application. The subcommittee will then go into a private session to discuss the application and reach a decision on whether to grant the application. So I'll now move to the first item on the agenda, and that's the election of chair. We have Councillor Lee Parker, who is the chair of the full Licensing and Regulatory Committee, so he will be chairing this subcommittee this morning. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Thank you. And good morning and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to YouTube and will be capable of repeated viewing. The meeting will be recorded except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Please note, if you're joining the meeting from a mobile phone, your mobile number may be visible on the screen and therefore also visible on the recording and live stream. There are some items of etiquette because we're live streaming this event. If we could ask, please, that you ensure your microphones are muted when you're not speaking, that you do not interrupt others, and that if you're attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Additionally, you'll be invited to speak and ask questions by the chair. Can I ask, please, that everybody waits their turn? So we'll move on to item number 3, which is apologies for absence. Can I ask Governance Officer if we have any apologies for absence?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. And item number 4, declaration of interest by councillors. Are there any declarations of interest? Can I ask Councillor Carpendale, please?
None, Chair. Thank
you. Councillor Osborne?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I don't know whether this is... I am a Sudbury Town Councillor, so I better just make that comment.
Thank you very much.
That's fine, Chair. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Lou. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Osborne. So by way of introduction, we'll just have a quick nip around the room and introduce ourselves to each other. Starting with myself, obviously, Councillor Lee Parker. I'm chairing the meeting this morning. Councillor Carpendale.
Good morning, Councillor Sue Carpendale.
Thank you. And Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm Adrian Osborne. I'm a Town Councillor for Sudbury and District Councillor for South East. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Osborne. And then we've got a number of officers in the room with us this morning as well. Mr. DeLu, you've already spoken, but could you just introduce your formal role here, please?
Yes, I'm Nigel DeLu. I'm the legal advisor to the subcommittee in this application.
Thank you very much. And then our licensing officers, please, starting with Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Catherine Green, licensing officer.
Thank you very much. And Kate.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Kate Pearsall, licensing team leader.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And then our governance officer, please.
Thank you, Chair. Governance Officer Karen Sayer.
Wonderful. Okay, and then I'd like to ask, please, Mr. Blake, if you can introduce yourselves. Have you got any representatives with you? Are you representing yourself, Mr. Blake?
No, I'm representing myself. I'm here with my wife Tanya, obviously applying for the licence for Gainsborough.
Excellent, that's wonderful. And can I just ask you, Mr. Blake, as well, could you just confirm receipt of procedure, the report itself, and copies of the relevant notice? Can you just confirm you've received all of those, please?
Yeah, I received them online and also received a hard copy in the post.
Excellent, that's grand. Thank you very much indeed. Right, okay, and at the risk of inviting a bit of a bun fight here, I do need to ask others in the room as well to introduce yourselves. So I have the following people listed as registered to speak. Mr. Alex Davis, are you in the room?
Hi, yeah, that's me.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And I have Danielle Ward.
Hi, yes, that's myself.
Lovely, that's grand. And Gillian Miles. Can you hear me, Ms. Miles? Okay.
She appears to be on mute, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just try one more time. There you go, Ms. Miles. Are you looking to speak this morning, Ms. Miles? Okay. We'll come back to you, Gillian, if that's all right, because we don't seem to be able to hear you for some reason. I note also that we've got Mr. Martin in the room, Mr. Barry Martin, although I'm aware of the fact, Mr. Martin, that you haven't actually sent back your attendance hearing notice. Was it your intention to speak this morning?
Only if I needed.
Okay, so you're here as an observer rather than a speaker, Mr. Martin. Yeah?
Yes. Correct.
Okay. And is that, I do need to ask, if I can just ask the legal officer, Mr. DeLu, is that in order, since Mr. Martin hasn't sent back his hearing notice?
Well, I did, but
It's your discretion, Councillor. If you feel it's beneficial for the proceedings, then
Sure.
it's in your gift.
Okay, I mean you're here, Mr. Martin. So I've got no intention of suggesting that it shouldn't be otherwise, sort of thing. But won't be able to let you speak, I'm afraid, Mr. Martin. All right.
Fair enough.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. And Ms. Miles, are you able to communicate with us at this stage? Okay. All right. We'll have to see what goes on. At the moment, we can't hear you, Ms. Miles. If it's your intention to speak, we can't hear from you at the moment. So we'll proceed as we are. Okay, so moving on to the next item. Can I ask whether any party to the hearing wishes to withdraw either their application or their representation? You only need to respond to that if that is your intention. Okay, I'll assume then that there's no intention for anybody to withdraw their application. Question to the licensing officer. Have there been any requests from any of the parties for permission to call witnesses?
No, Chair.
Excellent. And have the parties indicated they wish to present documentary or other material?
No, Chair.
Excellent. Okay, so back to you, Mr. Blake. Could I ask you, please, to estimate the time required to present your case and to ask questions of other parties to the hearing?
Yeah.
Approximately.
Sorry, was you speaking to me, Chair?
Yes, indeed. So yeah, so we're just asking.
5 or 10 minutes will be absolutely fine.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much indeed. And I'll ask the same question to anybody else that would like to speak as well. Does anybody plan on an elongated presentation at all?
Not myself.
Super. Thank you very much indeed. Right, okay, in which case, with the formalities done, I will proceed to the substantive item, which is item number 5, and I'm going to ask the licensing officer, Catherine Green, to present the report B/LA sub/22/3 and to summarise the matter under consideration. So when you're ready, please, Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. This hearing is to determine an application made for the grant of a new premises licence made under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 by Mark Blake in relation to the premises Courtyard Tap, 26 to 27 Gainsborough Street, Sudbury, Suffolk, CO10 2EU. The application was received by the Licensing Authority on the 12th of March 2023, and a copy of this is attached to this report as Appendix A. The application made has been subject to the statutory consultation period as prescribed by regulation. The notices advertising the application have been on display at the premises and published in the Suffolk Free Press on the 23rd of March 2023 edition. Full details of the proposed activities and timings are contained in the application form attached as Appendix A to this report. A hearing is necessary to determine the application following receipt of representations which have not been withdrawn. The subcommittee will be aware that its consideration is confined to promotion of the 4 licensing objectives, and the need or commercial demand for licensed premises are not considerations for the licensing authority when discharging its licensing functions. This is outlined by the Secretary of State at paragraph 1419 of the guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. In carrying out its licensing functions, the licensing authority must have regard to its statement of licensing policy published under Section 5 of the Act and any guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182. Where revisions are made to the legislation or guidance issued by the Secretary of State, there may be a period of time when the local statement of licensing policy is inconsistent with these revisions. In these circumstances, the licensing authority will have regard and give appropriate weight to the relevant changes, guidance and its own statement of licensing policy. The Licensing Authority has received no representations from responsible authorities under the Licensing Act 2003. There has been 9 representations received made by other persons, which includes local residents, businesses and residents associations, and this is attached as Appendix D to this report. The subcommittee must, having regard to the representations made, take such of the steps, if any, as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. To grant the licence, subject to conditions consistent with the operating schedule accompanying the application, modified to such extent as the authority considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives, and subject to any mandatory conditions which must be included in the licence. To exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates, to refuse to specify a person in the licence as a premises supervisor, or to reject the application. For these purposes, conditions of the licence are modified if any of them are altered or omitted, or any new condition is added. Any party aggrieved by the decision taken by the licensing authority in respect of this application has a statutory right of appeal to the Magistrates' Court. This concludes my summary, Chair.
Super job. Thank you very much indeed, Catherine. Okay, so I'm obliged at this point to ask if any parties, not yet the subcommittee minded, but if any parties to the hearing have any questions for the licensing officer. So that's questions rather than points or statements, because everybody will have their opportunity to make those shortly. But has anybody got any questions on anything that the licensing officer has just stated? Excellent, that's grand. I'll take the that as a no then, and the same question of members. If I can ask, do the subcommittee members have any questions at this stage of the licensing officer?
No, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Osborne? Okay. At which point then I'm going to ask the applicant, Mr. Blake, to present your case, sir, if you will. The applicant, that's you, may call witnesses if given permission by the subcommittee, but since there are none present, I presume we won't be doing that. So I'll just ask you to present your case in your own time, please, Mr. Blake.
Thank you very much, Chair. We've gone through the introductions. After reading all the documents that were sent to myself, I've tried to answer as many questions as I can, as quick as I can. It wasn't mentioned the hours. I actually already have a tap room which is in Housestead that I'm trying to duplicate in Sudbury. The hours trading at the moment in my house, and also if I'm successful in the application, would be Monday to Thursday 12 till 8 p.m. On a Friday I would like to stay open until maybe 9, but I just want to make it clear this meeting is a tap room. It's not a bar, it's a tap room which will be showcasing my beers that I produce in Gosfield at the brewery. The people that use a tap room at the moment, which I will feel will be very similar in Sudbury, are more senior people. It's not, the tap room isn't full of kids running around. It's not full of people drinking as much lager as possible. It's a tap room to showcase my beers, which are ales. One of the objections or representations was a flat upstairs, which I do understand. That's also the case in Housestead. There's a flat upstairs. I've been there for 3 years. I've never had one complaint as yet, and I don't envisage having any complaints in Sudbury. CCTV will be put as soon as, if we were successful, will be introduced to Gainsborough Street, which is obviously a good thing, a good deterrent. Music was mentioned, which again I understand. I wouldn't want to live upstairs from a pub that's banning music. The music will be played from an iPad, and it is background music. It's very, very quiet, just background music. Delivery of goods was mentioned as a representation. There will be no delivery of goods there because all the deliveries will come to my brewery, which is based in Gosfield, which again, that happens in Housestead at the moment. There's a very, very small path outside in Housestead, very similar to Sudbury, but there will be no trucks, no delivery wagons, everything will be delivered to Gosfield. Also, the price of a beer. My beer is quite expensive compared to other places in Sudbury, which I've looked at. You can go to quite a few establishments and buy a pint of beer for under £2 if your intention was to drink beer as quick as possible. My lowest price would be £4, which in Housestead, that prices out people that want cheap beer as quick as possible. That it just does not happen. So I'm just going through my notes. Anything else? Yeah, so that really sums up the hours, the type of people that use a tap room. Hopefully I've answered the music and the delivery and the price of beer. Obviously, any questions, I'll try and answer as quick as I can. But thank you very much.
Excellent. No, thank you, Mr. Blake, for being so succinct, and I'm quite certain that there will be lots of questions for you. So again, I'm obliged at this point to go around the table and to ask everybody in turn if they have any questions. Now, for the sake of order, we need to do this in a specific order. And these are just questions for Mr. Blake. Again, everybody will have an opportunity to make their own statement shortly. So this is just questions of Mr. Blake, if we can. And I'm going to start with, the other persons in the room, the other persons, if we can start in an order. We've got Mr. Davis. Do you have any questions for Mr. Blake?
Hi. Yeah, a couple. I was just hearing what you said about there not being deliveries and there being deliveries to Gosfield instead. How then does the ale get to the premises, in your mind?
Okay, that will be transported by myself. What I was trying to mention about the deliveries, as you know, being in Sudbury, it's a very tight area for lorries and there's nowhere to go. So basically, I will probably have maybe 1 or 2 barrels of beer which can fit in my boot. I will then park up where obviously it's legally to park and roll the barrels over. I will store some barrels on site in a air-conditioned area, which means if I run out of beer, I've got some there. There's room there to have a store.
So this is where I was trying to probe exactly, is where exactly would it be legal to park and roll a barrel, presumably down the street? I can't think of anywhere nearby that you would be able to do that.
Okay, well, I don't really know Sudbury as well as you guys do, obviously. There was opposite the tap room, there was a lay-by there where we parked when we viewed the premises. I think you could park there for a short space of time. But again, the deliveries can be at any time. It can be early in the morning or late at night. It's because I'm doing it myself, I'm not reliant on someone else to deliver.
Okay. I will leave that point as it stands. I think the other question I would have is, you've said a lot of things which are very reasonable about actually wanting something that's quite moderate in comparison to your application, right? The hours are significantly reduced. You're talking about iPad music being a lot quieter.
Do you need a question, Mr. Davis, please?
I guess, would you be amenable to certain restrictions or reductions in the scope of your application in order to pull it through, or is it as it stands and only as it stands?
No, I can answer that easily. I will listen to what you guys have got to say. The situation at, I don't want to keep referring to Halstead, but that's something I did 3 years ago, so it makes sense. It's very similar size building, very similar demographics. I'm licensed there by Braintree from 12 midday to 11, 7 days a week. It is never open past 8 o'clock Monday to Thursday, and weekends it's shut at 9. What that does is stop anyone coming in who wants to drink as much as possible. It's not that type of place. If you've been to a tap room, you'll probably understand. Most people go in there are couples. It's not in there to drink as much lager as possible. It just doesn't happen. By shutting at 8 and having CCTV, I've not had a police called once in 3 years. And I've also not had one complaint from the flat above. So that's just, if you Google the Courtyard Tap Room in Househead, you'll see the premises. And by shutting early, it's not, most people don't go out till after 8 o'clock at night. That doesn't attract those type of people. And I'm happy for concessions to be put in place.
Thank you, Mr. Blake.
Right, I'll yield. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Danielle Ward, do you have any questions to ask of Mr. Blake?
I'd like to know what Mr. Blake's plan is for management of the courtyard, being that his courtyard is obviously next to mine and his upstairs seating area overlooks my garden.
Thank you very much. Mr. Blake?
I'm finding it hard to understand the management of the, I don't understand the question, sorry.
Danielle, could
I can reword it.
Sorry. Yeah, if you can concisely, please.
So obviously Mr. Blake has said that he plans on pricing out a lot of certain clientele, but he's not going to know who's going to come until it's open. And, you know, what are his guarantees for watching over what people are doing in his courtyard?
Is that clear, Mr. Blake?
Yeah, that's 100%, yeah. Obviously, you know, I have a duty of care. I'm working there. It's a family-run business, and my son will be running it, or I'll be working there, or my wife will be working there. We see exactly what goes on all the time in Househead, and we'll. I can't guarantee what happens outside of the premises, but I will be as vigilant as I can be. That's all I can tell you.
Okay, Mr. Blake, any other questions at this time? Ms. Ward?
No.
Okay, and obviously you'll have an opportunity to make a representation shortly yourself, so thank you very much. Now, Ms. Mars, I know we were struggling earlier. I'm conscious and keen that if you do want to speak, that you can do so. Hopefully you're able to join in, but do you have any questions for Mr. Blake, please? Okay, so we're not able to.
Chair, perhaps
yeah.
If Miss Miles is able to access the chat function on here, if she could perhaps type in the question, you could read it out.
Yeah, sure.
If that's possible.
If that's an option. I mean, Miss Miles might be here saying that she, doesn't want to speak, and that's absolutely fine as well. But if you're able to, Miss Miles, perhaps you can use the chat function to type your question in. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, if there is anything that appears in the chat box shortly, we'll revert back to it. But we've got an opportunity at this stage now that everybody's had an opportunity to at least ask a question. We can come back to Gillian Miles if we need to. So, could I ask subcommittee members for their questions at this point? Councillor Carverdale, starting with you. Do you have any questions for Mr. Miles at this point? Mr. Blake,
thank
sorry.
you. Good morning, Mr. Blake. Thank you for the details that you've just supplied. That was very helpful. I do have some practical questions. We're quite interested to see how you intend to access the garden, given that it appears to be through the toilet and only one WC for the premises. Can you clarify how you propose to do that?
Yes, the first thing, should I be successful, there will be another lavatory put in place. It won't just be the one toilet, a unisex toilet. As for the garden, I can't see that being used to start with because it's a very, very small space. It's very overgrown and there is obviously a flat above it. So until, I can't really answer your question until I go down there and see exactly what the setup is. But I'm not going to be using that to start with, no.
Okay, thanks. I was interested to hear, you have a brewery. Are you actually a brewer?
Yes, I have a brewery in Gosfield, which we set up in 2018, where people can come and buy bottles, but they can't drink the beer on site, which is why I set up Housestead, which is now, I thought Sudbury would be a great area to have that. It's actually an award-winning brewery. We have awards from CAMRA as well, which come to a brewery and a tap room. So that's the type of people that will come and drink beer. I keep going on, but I'm sure you've all been to tap rooms. It will be shut at 8 o'clock. People come to enjoy the beer, 1 or 2 pints, not to drink dozens. It's not that type of place.
Craft beers, yes. You were talking about barrels earlier on, presumably also bottled beer and things of that nature.
Yes, the barrels will be, they are 9-gallon barrels, which is 72 pints. They will be on a stand, which will be shown to the public. There will be a fridge with bottled beers, and we also will sell our own. Everything from a brewery, everything that's done is from a brewery. So I don't send anything out of Gosfield. All my beer will be bottled here, labelled here, capped here. And then they'll put on in presentation if people want to take bottles away. But all the beers, I do 8 beers, so you probably have 3 or 4 on display that are rotated for people's choices. The darker beers don't sell so well in the summer. So, but yeah, they'll be on display. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I wonder if you can help me with the layout diagrams that we've got. I was a little bit confused. I'm looking firstly at the layout for the ground floor, and you've put some dimensions in. We seem to have lost a couple of feet on one side. Was that just a sort of typographical error? On the one side, on the right, as I look at it, you've got 8'10", which is matched on the left, and on the right side again you've got 16 feet 6, and on the left you've got 14 foot 5 inches. Is that just a measuring error?
We didn't measure it. The measurements are already there, so I just copied what was on.
Oh, right. Have you any explanation?
Me either, but
Is it actually the same across the bar area?
well, it's a bit wonky, so I've just presumed because it's an old building, it was wonky, and the difference was just
That's
where
2
the walls.
feet. Yes.
I know,
Okay.
I know. I couldn't
Okay.
work it out.
I mean,
Okay.
that's something we can certainly, I know
Oh, it's
we're
just
assessing.
curious.
We can certainly come back to you and answer that question.
Okay. What prompted me asking that was that I was trying to work out the relationship of the upstairs seating area to the ground floor. There's some sort of stairs put in, and from your drawings, and given there's a window as well, it looks as if your upstairs seating area is in fact over the main bar area. Would that be correct?
Yes, it would be, yes.
Yeah, it's in the middle of the building.
Because obviously we have a representation. We've talked about the flat upstairs, but I can't see where that upstairs flat would be. If it's, I think it was mentioned in one of the representations that it would be over someone's bedroom would be over the main bar area, but it looks as if the upstairs seating area that you're talking about would be over the main bar area. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, yes.
Right, okay. Right, so that appears to clarify that.
So I think the flat comes slightly over the left-hand side of the building, which is where the toilet area will be, and it's just a very small room, so it won't be directly over the bar at all.
Yes, so obviously you would have sort of different issues to deal with, not licensing ones, but looking at how you might need to change things within the building, which are not our concern. What might be of interest to us is how you might have some sound deadening. I know you're talking about a different type of pub from what we would normally expect, but are you proposing any sound deadening to try to mitigate any impact on nearby residents?
I wasn't because, as I said, it is background music. It's
I was just
very
thinking of voices, you know.
Okay, I mean I'll look at most things that you guys recommend. Of course I will. I want to try and gain this license, and if you guys say, right, you need to do X, Y, Z, if it's commercially viable, I will certainly look at it. There's anything out there that can help, then of course I will look at it. And if that needs to be done, but with a music, it certainly wouldn't need to be done because it's very background. The noise of people is a tricky one. Again, it doesn't get that noisy in Housestead. I've not had one complaint for noise, nor the person, and the person is actually upstairs. I mean, they live upstairs and they are absolutely, in fact, they come in now and again. So, but I'd have to look at it. If someone said to me, look, that noise is awful, then of course I will look at it, yes.
Yeah, it's an old building, isn't it? A Grade 2 listed building. Yes, okay. I think that's me for the moment, Chair, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, it is a listed building, yes, sorry. I keep muting and unmuting, so...
That's absolutely fine, and thank you as ever, Councillor Carpenter. You've asked all of my questions and some in advance, so that should save some time. Now, just before I move on to Councillor Osborne, there is a question from Ms. Miles in that. Well, there's a statement in the chat from Ms. Miles. It's not for me to put the question or to anticipate what the question is, but the statement says, I'm concerned that if you have a license for longer opening hours, that once you are established you will extend your opening hours. So if I were asking a question following on from that, my question would be, is it your intention to extend your opening hours?
Definitely not. As I said, the tap room in Housestead has been there 3 years. It shuts at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock on Friday, 9 o'clock on Saturday, and actually it shuts at 6 on a Sunday. It's all avoidance of people that may want to come in here and spoil what will be a pleasant experience for lots of people. I don't want that spoiled by people I have to be very careful how I talk here. I'm not used to doing this, guys, so I do apologise if I'm thinking ahead. The people that come in, I don't want their experience to be ruined by people. Just for example, just quickly, I'll tell you a story. I had a guy come up last week and said, I don't come in your place in Halstead. I said, why? He said, because I drink lager. I said, well, I can do you a bottle lager. He said, well, I can get it so much cheaper up the end of a road. So I said, okay, well, I hope you enjoy up the end of the road. That's not the sort of person I want in the tap room.
Okay. All right. So to answer the question, you will definitely not seek to extend your hours, is the answer, Mr. Blake. Thank you. Okay, I have got another question as well, but I'm just going to see if Councillor Osborne, do you have any questions for Mr. Blake at this point? Actually, I'm looking at Councillor Osborne. I'm not entirely sure if you're still with us or not, Councillor Osborne. Oh, there you are.
No, I've been listening intently, Mr. Chairman. And I can just good morning, Mr. Blake and Tanya. Yeah, everything that you have stated about the opening hours, etc. I'm still a little bit confused because you put to 11 o'clock. I don't. Does that mean you're having to change your licensing hours? I mean, I just clarify. I might have missed something that you said when you were offering Councillor Carpendale answers. So, is that now a changeable venue now in terms of hours?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously I'm not used to these sort of things, but going back on Halstead, I thought the licensing 12 to 11, but I just wanted to explain to you guys that it still shuts at 8 o'clock, and I'm happy to make an amendment if that's the case. I do not wish to open later than 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock on a Friday, Saturday, and 6 o'clock on a Sunday.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, that just needs to be put in writing, really, because
I can probably just clarify, Councillor Osborne, just to confirm that your application is amended to the hours of 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday to Thursday, and 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. Fridays and Saturdays. Can you confirm that's what you want to do?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yes.
Thank you.
And it won't change, definitely not, because otherwise it just takes away what I set out for it to be in the first place.
Well, there's always the opportunity to vary a license in the future, but for today's purposes, we're considering granting a license on that basis. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Mr. Blake. Just one other. You talked about where you're going to have to deliver your stores from. From my memory, although there's a car park just opposite what was called the Hardwick House Surgery, the lay-by, I can't think of one that is opposite opposite the old Bazaar building, but there is one just further down as you're going towards the fire station on the right-hand side, which there's a lay-by there, which I think is near the restaurant, which is open, new restaurant which is open there. So that for you, is that the area that you're talking about delivering from and to?
Yeah, there was I think that, towards the fire station, I think there was a Chinese and a lay-by there, which sometimes you can park and sometimes you can't. But as I say, the delivery will take minutes.
Right, okay. And just a clarification again, the red-lined areas that you've got in that area, the bar area, that's just for consumption of beer. So you're not actually looking at anybody coming out of that area with drinks or an off-sales license, which you state you were going to apply. Will you have to apply for an off-sales license then for people to take bottles out?
Yeah, that's something I may apply for, but you are right. Within that red area is for the consumption, yes.
Okay. Well, that's very kind. Thanks for your answers, Mr. Blake. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Right, jolly good. So, Mr. Mr. Blake, just for context, and forgive me, you might have already mentioned this, but just for context, can you just give me an idea? What is your length of experience in the trade, sir?
Okay, I've been brewing since I was, very, very young. Not very successfully. The beer was awful. Then, when I moved to Gosfield about 10 years ago, I bought a house that had a coach house adjacent to it, and we started to brew there with something called a grain father, in which we brewed successful beer. And it was 3 years ago that we started a brewery, which has been working very well. 5 years. And as I said earlier, in fact, we've won awards from Canberra, which come regularly to the brewery and the tap room. So it's been probably 10 years or so.
Okay, and your premises in Halstead has been running, you say, for what, five years then, yeah?
3 years since 2020. The brewery was 2018 and Halstead was 2020, yes. Excellent.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, I don't have any further questions at this stage for you. So I'm just going to quickly revert back to my councillor colleagues just to see if there are any further questions from either councillor at this stage.
No, I haven't, Mr. Chairman, and Councillor Carpenter, I'll ask most of the questions that I'd already put down to ask.
Yeah, indeed, right.
Thank you, Sue.
Okay, so in that case then, could I ask finally if our licensing officers have any questions of Mr. Blake at this time?
No, Chair.
No, Chair, thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Okay, in which case then we will move on, and I'm now going to ask each of the other persons to present their cases, if they so wish to do so. So again, doing so in order, I'm going to ask Mr. Davis, Alex Davis, to do so, and then at the end of your presentation, Mr. Davis, I'm going to see if anybody has any questions for you. So when you're ready, sir, over to you.
Hi there. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So essentially, the reason that I put in a request to be able to speak was to be able to respond. Fundamentally, I've said what I've said in my documents. I do have concerns about the application having been put in with limited sight of the venue and the parking surrounding. You know, when we're talking about deliveries being taken, pretty much that lay-by Kohinoor is right next to my house, pretty much. So I know it very well. That is an area where I'm not sure you're going to be able to park. The school street car park is constantly full. And then adjacent, you have a care home and a fire station, all of which you need emergency access to, and all of which you're in one-ways and very narrow roads. You have a lot of car accidents take place on the corner because it's a four-way junction. And I don't mean any disrespect to Mr. Blake by this, but simply he's seen a venue, liked it, and put in an application and not necessarily had the opportunity to scope out some things, in the same way as we're seeing with other aspects of the application. I kind of stand by the representations that I've made, but mostly I'm here to address any kind of qualms you may have with it. Otherwise, I'm happy to yield.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Davis, for explaining your situation. I think that's perfectly fair and reasonable as well. So in the same format, I'm obliged to ask if people have any questions of you, Mr. Davis, and that's starting with yourself, Mr. Blake. Now, those are questions, not statements, and I must insist on that. So do you have any questions for Mr. Davis?
No, I understand exactly what he says, so yeah, thank you for that.
Excellent, that's wonderful. And again, do any of the other parties, either Miss Ward or Miss Miles, have any questions for Mr. Davis at this point? Okay, I'll assume from the silence that that's a no, and so I'll ask again, members. Councillor Carpendale, do you have any questions for Mr. Davis at this point?
No, thank you, Chair.
Super job. And also, Councillor Osborne, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I'm quite satisfied with Mr. Davis's responses. Thank you.
Okay, that's grand. And then finally, to our licensing officers, do you have any questions for Mr. Davis?
No, thank you, Chair.
And no, thank you, Chair.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Davis. Thank you. So we will then move on to Danielle Ward. Miss Ward, again, you know the drill by now. If you've got any points that you'd like to make, now's the time to do it, and we'll ask questions at the end if you'd like to speak.
Thank you. So first, I'd like to clarify that my bedroom is actually over the downstairs seating area and the toilet area. There are sort of two. Mine is actually right over one of those. It seems like Mr. Blake actually hasn't been aware of that when he's been looking at the property. I have found it slightly annoying today that he keeps saying he's had no complaints from the current person living above his premises in Housestead, because different people are different. I've lived in a pub before. I appreciate he says it's not going to be a pub, it's going to be a tap room, but I have lived in one before, caused a lot of trauma, and I actually bought my house to move away from another premises like that as well. I would never have bought my home had this been a pub beforehand, and I am now, living there. I'm too late in the process to consider buying somewhere else or to consider buying somewhere different. I appreciate that he has said today that, he would like a certain type of clientele, but you cannot make any guarantees until the premises are open, and he has admitted today that he has no control of people once they are outside of the premises, so there are no guarantees that it will not cause public nuisance or issues with public safety. One of my main questions really would be, is Mr. Blake willing to open this tap room on the ground floor of his own home? Because that is what he is suggesting to do to my home. I waited more than 10 years to be in a position to buy my home, and this is my first home as a youngish person. And it took me a long time to be able to do this myself, and it's been a very difficult process to buy the house. And right at the end stage, Mr. Blake has made this application. I appreciate that obviously public safety and those similar matters have to be the forefront of your mind, but I would urge all of you to consider whether you'd be willing to grant this application if it was your home that was next to and above a tap room or a public house, whichever you'd like to call it, and just take those into consideration for me today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miss Ward. Thank you. And yeah, your concerns are noted. It's clearly evident that you have those concerns, so we'll take that on board. Mr. Blake, do you have any questions? And it must be a question rather than a statement, please. Do you have any questions for Miss Ward?
No, none at all.
Thank you very much. And again, I'll come back to Councillor. Well, actually, I'll ask if anybody else, Mr. Davis or Miss Mars, do you have any questions at this time for Miss Ward?
Could I just ask one question, which is, can we confirm whether your property is also Grade 2 listed, and therefore you would have significant difficulty with installing soundproofing within your own home?
Yes, my house is also Grade 2 listed.
Great, thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Any other questions from any of the other parties at the moment? I can't see anything in the chat at this stage, but we can come back to that if needs be. In which case, I'll move on. Councillor Carpendale, do you have any questions for Ms. Ward?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, morning, Ms. Ward. We seem to have some difficulty over the location of the upstairs seating area for what is proposed and what you're saying is your bedroom. They seem to be in conflict. Is there any way you can help us with identifying the exact situation of the rooms?
So if the premises 26 to 27 is on the corner, you have a front door that is closest to the corner, which is, I believe, proposed to be the actual bar area. And then you go through a doorway to the left that is, I believe, proposed to be a downstairs seating area and the toilet through to the garden. That seating area downstairs has like a non-functional doorway. And then as you go over to the left is my front door, which leads directly into my living room. So my living room is sort of next to the downstairs seating area. And then as you go up my stairs, my bedroom is to the right. So my bedroom window is immediately in line with the non-functional door downstairs. And then as you carry on over to the right, he's got the upstairs seating area. I'm sorry if that's confusing.
No, thank you. It sounds as if the upstairs seating area would be immediately adjacent to your bedroom.
Yes, it would.
Okay. Thank you very much. That clarifies it. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Osborne, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, the very questions that I was going to ask was exactly what Sue has just mentioned. It's a bit confusing in the upstairs area, so I tend to agree with Councillor Carpendale. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms Ward, if I may, if I could ask a question, just for clarity, could I ask how long you have owned the premises, how long you've been in the premises? I know you've written in your report, but I think what I'd like clarity on is, obviously that premises historically has been a retail unit, and so if it weren't a tap that were being, or a tap bar that were being proposed here, it might well be another commercial operation. So would your objection hold if it were any other commercial operation, or is it this application specifically? And it might be a bit unfair because it's only this application that we're dealing with, but again, I'm just looking for context, just to see how your feelings are. So how long have you been there? Was it a retail operation when you moved in, and what's your views to it being a commercial operation of some sort in the future?
So I have owned the property for exactly a month today, and I've lived there for 3 weeks, but I have been in the process of buying it for the last 8 months. I obviously knew it was a commercial property when I bought the house, and I did say that in my representation. However, Bazaar's hours were much reduced. It was a member, 2 members of staff at any one time. Yes, my objection is specifically to this application. If it was another shop, or if it was an office area, for example, their hours of operation are likely to be my hours of operation in my job, and they would be closed when I come home.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very clear. Thank you. Okay, so that's all the questions that I have. Assuming that there's no other questions from councillors, I'll move to the licensing officer and ask if the licensing officer has any questions of Ms Ward, please.
No, thank you, Chair.
No questions, thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Okay. Now I'm just going to enter into the chat because I can see that there is okay, so there's a photograph that's been entered into the chat. That's understood, and I think that's from Mr Davis. Thank you, Mr Davis. I think we understand where the premises or where you're I see where you are relevant to the premises involved. Okay, that's fine. Right, okay, so the next bit, I might need some guidance here from officers, because Ms Miles has indicated that she would like to speak, but obviously we're struggling to make contact with Ms Miles. So I don't know if our officers have any guidance on how we might conduct that, because I'm conscious that if people have asked to speak, they should be able to.
Yes, Chair, it's difficult. Obviously, we're time constrained in dealing with this application, and today was unfortunately we had to do it remotely because of other circumstances. There is the opportunity to put things into the chat, which you've indicated you would accept in this respect. We do have the written representation. All representations are only there to just to amplify what has already been put down in writing. So you have had the representations, and so you are aware of of what those representations are. It is unfortunate, but it's unless circumstances change in the last few minutes, I think you will need to proceed. If you want to give a few more minutes to allow some more information through the chat function, that's your discretion. If she feels that there should be something that she needs to add. But like I say, you had the written representation, so fundamentally you are aware of what the objections are from that person.
Okay, thank you very much for the guidance then in that case, Mr. DeLu. What I would ask then, perhaps, Ms. Miles, if you could just indicate, if you can, just quickly indicate in the chat whether you wish to make any further points or whether you're happy to proceed. Are you able to do that for us? We'll just allow a few moments for Ms. Miles to type in the chat. If not, I'll assume that we could just move on. Okay, yeah, that's understood. So Ms. Miles is in the chat, said that she'd like to make some further points. So we'll wait for those to come through. Okay, so Ms. Miles has made a point in the chat. I'm sure we can all see it, but I will read it out. And I think there's some emphasis here that it has not been mentioned that this is a conservation area as well as an area of many listed buildings. Enough has not been made of the safety issues with people coming out into the very narrow pavement in front of the building where cars frequently pass at excessive speed. So that's the point that's been made. Now I'm conscious that we're just not going to be able to ask questions of Miss Miles because there won't be an opportunity to be able to respond in a reasonable period of time. So I think I can just make an assurance to Miss Miles that those will be cases, I'm sure, that will be taken into account when councillors retire to make their deliberations. So your point there has been noted, I think, and we'll give that due consideration. I think that's probably the fairest thing that I can say about that at this stage. So in the absence of there not being any further points that are coming forward, Councillor Carpendale.
Thank you, Chair. Just in response to Ms. Miles' comment there, I wonder if we could say to Mr. Blake, is there a planning application involved with this proposed business? And if so, would the traffic issues be dealt with more by planning? I mean, I know that's sort of two-stage question, but yes, clearly there's a concern about there.
And I wonder if that's a question for Mr. Blake, with due respect, or whether it might be a question, if it's a planning question, it might be one for our legal officer to address, actually. But it's a perfectly valid question, but I wonder if it's something that our legal officer could address. The second point, certainly.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously, this would fall under the licensing objective of the protection of public safety. Generally speaking, when we're dealing with licensing applications, the public safety aspect is in relation to the operation of the premises. The premises itself, whether it is safe for customers, whether it is safe to accommodate a certain number of customers, whether the activities taking place within the premises are done in a safe way and not putting people to risk. Obviously, there is an impact on a commercial premises where it is next to a highway, but that's not uncommon. But you have to give a limited weight in respect of safety issues away from the premises, such as highway issues. Going back to what Councillor Carpenter has asked about the planning permission, if there is a planning application and a planning permission, then the Highways Authority will be a statutory consultee in respect of that matter. And as experts in highway matters, they will be the ones that may raise issues relating to highway safety. That's their concern. And planning applications deal more with the effects and the impact on the amenity of the area and wider issues. So you're really concentrating on, in this respect, when you're thinking about public safety, you're looking at the direct impact that the property is having on mainly its customers. It can knock on to the general public, but I would say that would have to be a fairly exceptional circumstance for you to consider. You'd have to be fairly certain that the circumstances are unusual enough to have an impact. So hopefully that clarifies that for you.
Yes, thank you. And I hopefully that might also assist Ms. Miles with her concerns. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carpendale. Okay, and so finally, I'm just going to ask our officers whether they finally have any questions or anything as a result of Ms. Miles's point at all.
No, Chair, thank you.
No, thank you, Chair.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Davis. Your comment in the chat box has been noted as well. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to, we've been able to ask questions both of the applicant and indeed of the other representatives in the room. So I'm satisfied that all the questions have been asked. Could I therefore ask, please, for the licensing officer, if you wish to give a closing statement or to summarise any points which need clarity at this point, please?
I've got nothing further to add, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. In which case, I will ask the applicant, Mr. Blake. Do you have anything finally that you would like to say?
No, obviously, thank you for your time and thank you for your questions. We'll go from there, but yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. That's grand. Okay, so for the benefit of everybody in the room now, what will happen next is that the subcommittee members will retire, and we will make our deliberations. So, what I need to do is to make a motion at this point, which I'll do so now, on the basis that the subcommittee considers that the public interest in excluding the public outweighs the public interest in its deliberation being held in public. It is resolved that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12 of the Act on the grounds set out in Regulation 14(2) of the Licensing Act 2003, Hearings Regulation 2005, and I will require a seconder to that motion, please. Councillor Carpendale.
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you very much. And you're in agreement, Councillor Osborne?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I am indeed.
Excellent. Okay, so the members of the subcommittee will now leave this meeting. The live stream will be stopped. Everybody is perfectly at liberty to remain on this thread while the subcommittee members make their deliberations, and we'll come back to everybody as quickly as we can. So.
Okay, ready.
Wonderful. Okay, in which case I'm going to ask our legal officer, Mr. DeLu, to return and to give the decision, announce the decision of the subcommittee. If you'll be prepared to do that now, please, Mr. DeLu.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for waiting. The subcommittee have considered this in great detail. Just to start with, I'd like to say that licensing applications always come with a presumption that the application will be granted as applied for, unless there are representations made in respect of that application, and that those representations satisfy the licensing authority that there is an unacceptable impact on any of the licensing objectives. Consider the highway and delivery issues, and as mentioned during the committee hearing, there is limited weight that the subcommittee can give on those matters, and the subcommittee feel there is insufficient evidence to show that those matters would lead to an unacceptable impact on the licensing objectives. The main concern in this matter is the adjoining property, but the difficulty that the subcommittee have in this is that this is a new venture. There is no evidence to show any historical problems with noise, so the subcommittee are having to try and anticipate the issues. They've been helped greatly by the applicant reducing the hours to 8 p.m. from Sundays to Thursdays and to 9 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. They're also knowledgeable that if there is a noise issue, this can be brought back to the licensing authority to be considered and the license to be reviewed. Under normal circumstances, when there are noise issues, it comes under the Environmental Health Department to investigate whether or not there is a statutory nuisance caused. With licensing, it's slightly different. If you are required to maintain a fairly noise-free environment and not cause a nuisance, the nuisance doesn't need to meet that statutory provision. So a license can be brought back to the subcommittee and they can decide whether to review a license. They can revoke it, they can amend it in any way they like, they can impose conditions to address that issue. So on that ground, the licensing subcommittee has agreed to grant the license with the amended hours. Just a reminder though that if there are issues, because the subcommittee, the members were concerned as to the impact, it's very difficult to tell with a building that they're not familiar with. We don't know what the noise attenuation will be like, but they are comforted by the model of premises you want to operate, and that's been sufficient for them to come to this decision. There is a right of appeal against this decision, and that appeal is open to anyone who has made representations to the licensing authority, and the appeal can be made in writing to the Magistrates Court within 21 days of receiving notification of the decision. I think that's it, Chair. If there's anything you wanted to add before you close the subcommittee.
No, thank you very much, Mr. DeLu. I think you've summarised the deliberations, and they were considerable deliberations, as you know, because we were gone for some time. So with all of that done, I will bring this meeting to a close at this point. I'd just like to give personal thanks to everybody that has attended. Thank you for your patience this morning. It's been a long meeting, and thank you also for your conduct as well. It's always quite a challenging process when it's online like this. So thank you very much to everybody for the conduct, etc. But other than that, I will close this meeting for now, and thank you all very much for your time.